Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. For today, our group will be presenting about the development of democracy in Malaysia. When we think about the perfect democracy, we often imagine an ideal society where everyone enjoys equal rights, freedom, justice and a meaningful voice in government. However, in reality, no country has achieved a completely perfect democracy. Instead, democracy is a system that continues to evolve and improve over time. Malaysia is a good example of how democracy has continuously evolved. Since gaining independence in 1957, the country's democratic system has experienced significant changes. It has gone through different phases, including ethnic power sharing, periods of stronger executive control, the reformasi movement, and the historic change of government in 2018. These developments show that democracy is not a fixed destination, but an ongoing process of adaptation and improvement. Thus, understanding the development of democracy is very important because it can influence the legitimacy of government, public participation, protection of rights, and the overall stability of a country. And in Malaysia, democratic development has shaped not only politics but also economic policies, social harmony, and national unity. Therefore, this presentation will be discussing and focusing on the historical development of democracy in Malaysia, beginning from pre-colonial era to colonial period, the pre-independence era, to finally the democratic developments that continue to shape Malaysia today. Let's move on to the next session. Now, here we are at the first stage of the development of democracy in Malaysia, which is the pre-independence democracy adaptation and practices. So we know that the first stage of Malaysia's democratic development covers the period of from the pre-colonial era until independence in 1957. Which we know democracy did not begin immediately after independence, but gradually evolved through traditional governance, British colonial rule, and influence and the rise of nationalism. Before colonial rule, the Malacca Sultanate practiced governance based on Islamic values such as justice, consultation, or we call it as musyawarah, accountability, and ethical leadership. Although we know that it was a monarchy system, these principles encourage consultation in decision making and later influence Malaysia's democratic culture. And during British rule, modern political institutions were then introduced, including representative councils, codified laws, and local council elections. While these elections were limited to selected groups, they marked the beginning of electoral participation and representative government in Malaya. And then we know that the Malayan Union proposal in 1946 then became a major turning point, which we know it sparked widespread opposition, leading to the formation of United Malays National Organization, or we know then as UMNO, and the strengthening nationalist movements across the country. This growing political awareness eventually led to the 1955 Federal Legislative Council elections, where the Alliance Party, or Perikatan, demonstrated successful multi-ethnic cooperation and public support for self-governance. Finally, the Federal Constitution of Malaysia established parliamentary democracy, constitutional monarchy, fundamental liberties, and the separation of powers. These developments is crucial, provided by Malaysia, which is with a stable democratic foundation before achieving independence in 1957.
Now let us look at the first federal election in Malaya, which was held on 27 of July 1955. This election marked the beginning of democracy by allowing citizens to choose their own leaders through voting. The Alliance Party won 51 out of 52 seats, giving it a strong mandate to form a government. This reflected the people's strong support for the party. Tunku Abdul Rahman led the Alliance Party during the election and became the first Prime Minister of Malaya after its victory. He also played an important role in leading the country towards independence. In conclusion, the 1955 federal election was a significant milestone in the country's journeys towards democracy and independence.
So now, I will explain stage 3, which is independence in 1957. On 31 August 1957, the Federation of Malaya officially gained independence from British colonial rule. This was a very important turning point in Malaysian history because it marked the success of peaceful negotiation and political cooperation led by local leaders. Independence also allowed Malaysians to govern the country based on our constitution and political system. The second point is that Malaysia adopted a parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy. After independence, Malaysia introduced a parliamentary democracy where citizens could choose their representative through election. These elected representatives are responsible for forming the government and making decisions for the country. At the same time, Malaysia maintained the constitutional monarchy system where the Yang di-Pertuan Agong (YDPA) and the Malay rulers serve as symbols of national unity, while their power are limited by the federal constitution. Next, the federal constitution was established. The federal constitution became the highest law of the country. It defines the powers of the government, the right of responsibilities of citizens, and the role of monarchy. It also guarantees fundamental liberties such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and equality before the law. The constitution was carefully drafted through discussion involving different ethnic groups, political leaders, and the Red Commission to ensure stability in a multicultural society. Lastly, Parliament and democratic institutions were formed. After independence, Parliament became the main legislative body responsible for making law and debating national issues. It also strengthened the principle of accountability and representation because leaders are expected to serve the people and answer to the public. Through election, citizens are able to participate in choosing their leaders and shaping the country's future. In conclusion, independence in 1957 was not only about gaining freedom from British rule, but it also laid the foundation for Malaysia's democratic system, political stability, and national unity that continues to guide the country today. So next, I will pass to the next person.
Now I am going to present on stage 4, which is the formation of Malaysia in 1963. Let's look at how our democracy expanded. On September 16, 1963, Sabah, Sarawak and Singapore joined Malaya to form Malaysia. To make sure this was fair, a group called the Cobalt Commission visited Sabah and Sarawak in 1962. They interviewed the local people and found that most of them wanted to join. This shows that Malaysia was created by the choice of the people. After the merger, our democracy grew. Sabah and Sarawak were given special rights under agreement called the 20 points and 80 points. This allowed them to control local things like immigration, showing that our democracy could adapt to protect regional identities. This merger also gave East Malaysia a voice in the government. The federal parliament was expanded and new seats were given to Sabah and Sarawak. It's protected from being outvoted by Peninsula Malaysia. That's all from me.
Now moving on to the last stage of the development of democracy in Malaysia, which is the modern era of democracy practices in Malaysia, which happened from 2000s until now. The fifth stage represents Malaysia's transition into a more competitive and participatory democracy. For example, in this 21st century, Malaysians become increasingly political aware due to concerns over corruption, rising living costs, the demand for greater transparency and accountability. This growing awareness was clearly reflected in the 14th general election, where Barisan Nasional we saw lost huge power for the first time after more than 6 decades in government. This historic election then demonstrated that democratic change could be achieved peacefully through the ballot box. Then we know the influence and the integration of technology has also transformed democracy. For example, we have social media platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram and TikTok, which enable political parties to communicate directly with voters, particularly young people. While this increased political participation, it has also created challenges such as misinformation and political polarization. We can actually showcase the real life case study, which is the past, how they influence young voters through the utilization of social medias and technology through TikTok, Instagram, and how it has given them a very significant advantages, not just on the platform itself, but on the general election across all country. And we know that Malaysia also experienced political instability following the Sheraton move, which led to the collapse of elected government. And in response, the Malaysian government has did such reforms such as the anti-party hopping law or Akta Lompat Parti and Undi 18, which lowered the voting age from 21 years old to 18 years old and introduced automatic voter registration, were implemented to strengthen democratic accountability and youth participation. Overall, Malaysia's democracy has become more open and competitive. However, challenges such as corruption, coalition instability, and the spread of misinformation continue to test democratic progress. The future of democracy, therefore, depends on continued institutional reform, responsible leadership, and active participation from the rakyat.
Now let us move on to the challenges of democracy in Malaysia. Although Malaysia has strengthened its democratic system, several challenges still remain. Firstly, political division continues to affect governance. Coalition politics require different parties to compromise, which can slow down reforms and decision-making. Secondly, misinformation on social media spread quickly and can influence public opinion. As a result, it becomes more difficult for citizens to make informed decisions. Another challenges is corruption and abuse of power. This issue reduces public trust and increase the demand for greater transparency and accountability from political leaders. Finally, managing diversity in a multicultural society can be complex. Different ethnic and political interests sometimes make it harder to reach consensus and implement policies. In conclusion, overcoming these challenges is essential to strengthen democracy and ensure a more stable and effective political system in Malaysia.
Now, let's talk about why democracy is so important for Malaysia. I will share three main reasons. First, it brings political stability. Because we use elections to choose our government, Malaysia can change prime ministers and leaders peacefully. We do not have violent wars or military takeovers when power change hands. This peace makes our country safe and helps our economy grow. The second one is it gives regular people a voice. Democracy allows citizens to form community groups and NGO. These groups act as a bridge to talk to the government. They push leaders to be honest, stop corruption, and improve public services like schools and hospitals. The last but not least, it helps manage our multiracial society. In Malaysia, no single race can win an election alone. The democratic system forces different ethnic parties to work together and form multiracial teams to build a government. This encourages leaders to be fair and peaceful to everyone. So, to conclude, important shows that our democracy is the backbone that keeps Malaysia peaceful, fair and united. That is all from me. Thank you.